Hi everybody, it's Ann Katzoff of Ask Design. Welcome. Today I'm going to talk about redesigning my Bootstrap website. It had been at least 10 years since I last redesigned my website. I try to keep up with the ever-changing web landscape by using Bootstrap for my main site and WordPress for my blog, and a fresh start was needed for both. So I decided to do for my own site what I do for clients, which is let's try to create a unique design using the most current aesthetic and technical protocols. So I'll share with you a bit of my process and the multitude of tools that I used as I tackled the main site. There were a few key areas for my redesigned website. I wanted it to be clean and uncluttered. I wanted to pay attention to site speed and performance, mobile responsiveness, accessibility and user inclusion, GDPR compliance, and search engine optimization. Now, Figma has become my primary design tool for websites. Switching tools is not always easy, but with Figma, I was immediately impressed. Learning this new tool was exciting and stimulating. Prior to Figma, each phase of my design process required a different tool. Now I can do virtually all of it in one workspace. So I begin with brainstorming. Every project begins with a brainstorming. And this part's really fun for me. I check out other sites, I doodle and dabble, I sketch, and I save a lot of my stuff to Pinterest. Here's my Pinterest page. I have a bunch of different boards that I save things to. And my web design board is filled with a bunch of stuff that inspires me and gets my creative juices flowing. During brainstorming, I give myself plenty of time, sometimes weeks, and it's not always a linear process. So the key for me is to not self-edit anything at this stage. Just be a sponge, be an open sponge, and just let the ideas flow. Concepts will emerge for me during the brainstorming process. But when I do feel saturated, finally, with enough ideas, I start squeezing out the sponge and narrowing down the possibilities. Eventually, I zero in on the strongest options. And for me, I like to focus on the home, about, and portfolio pages for my brainstorming phase. The next step in my design process is to build a new color palette. My website palettes have been based on nature. Deep earthy tones have gradually lightened up and adapted to prevailing web design sensibilities. And now I live near the coast, so I wanted to have an oceanic palette. Color is one of the key areas that I modified in the redesigned site because of WCAG guidelines. Contrast was a priority, so I tweaked each color in my existing palette, tested and tweaked some more. It was a lot of tweaking and testing. Now, my old tools back in the day, I started with Photoshop and then got a little bit more into Illustrator, but now I do even my color palettes in Figma. I found a wonderful plugin called the Foundation Color Generator, and it has these different profiles. I use the material profile, plugged in my primary color, and it spits out a palette of that color, which I then tweaked based on my own percentages of hues that I wanted. And I did that for each color. So you can see I have a primary, I have secondary primary, tertiary, I have a whole range of colors, even though I actually am using color sparingly on the redesigned site. My next step is to select fonts and icons. And again, back to Figma. It supports access to thousands of fonts, including all system fonts, Google fonts, custom fonts, and more. I did a typography scale in Figma. I went with Google Fonts. I didn't change that too much. I had been using, for my sans serif, I had been using ASAP. I changed it to Lato, and I stuck with Cormorant Garamond for my serif font. And then I switched from glyphicons for my icons to Font Awesome. And all of that can be done in Figma. The next step for me is a wireframe. Wireframing simplifies the layout to the bare bones, so you can easily see how the components interconnect. There's no color, images, styling, nothing to distract you from the essentials of functionality and usability. I constructed a wireframe for the home and about pages. Now, my original tool over the years had been Balsamic for many years, actually, and then I now do it in Figma. So Figma, as you probably know or have guessed, it has resources for about just about anything that you need. And I found another plugin called Wireframing in Figma, and you can see it on the screen here. It has common layouts for navigation, hero sections, and various body content that really helped me get started. And you can find what works for you. There's a lot of different options in Figma. The next step is design. The wireframe skeletons get dressed up in the design stage. I basically take my Figma wireframes, clone them into a new area on my Figma workspace, and start designing with all the styling, colors, fonts, images, all that stuff. Now, for years, I did my designs in Illustrator. I came into web design from the print world, so Illustrator allowed me to be very precise. But then I had to export everything to Photoshop to get image ready images. So then I decided, well, let's skip that Illustrator step and do everything in Photoshop. So that was fine for a while, but now I just do it in Figma. Now, components and styles have their own space in Figma. So we can create a reusable library of our color palette. Here we go. Logos, my typography scale that I mentioned earlier, the navigation. I work out all these details. I have them in my reusable library, and I just take them, copy and paste them from the library onto my actual design comps. So these are high fidelity design comprehensives for what I do is the home, about, services, and contact pages. So let's skip back. It's still in the wireframe workspace, but a different section of it. And you can see it's very precise. And Figma allows you to do this pretty seamlessly and rather quickly. You can do different columns, different sections, and use that as your template for the actual development of the site. Once the designs are finished, I'm ready to build the site. I always begin a web project by creating a project folder for it. This folder is uploaded to the cloud in a GitHub repository. We call them repos. This is my home page on GitHub and all the different repositories that I have. Here's the one that I used for my own website. All of my files are in this repo. The beauty of GitHub is that it tracks all the changes. So if I do need to revert back to anything, I can do that. Once the repo is set up in GitHub, I add it to my local development environment. I find working locally is safer and quicker, and I use Local by Flywheel for that. I'll show you the home page. About 6 years ago, I changed from MAMP Pro to desktop server to Local by Flywheel for local development. When you create a new site in Flywheel, it will automatically add WordPress files and a database. It's designed to do that, which is fine. But with HTML sites, I don't need the WordPress files or the database, so I have to manipulate things a little bit. I rename Flywheel's automatically created public folder to something else. I call it public-WP for WordPress. And then I create my own public folder for my actual HTML-based files. And through all of this, I have to make sure that my site naming in Flywheel matches the GitHub naming, so everything works together seamlessly. My web design and development journey began more than 20 years ago. So you can imagine I've tried many different tools and used many different applications, fine-tune my methods, and it's a continual process of discovery, learning, and adapting. Now, let me take you quickly through all the different apps that I've used, and then we'll fast forward to the Bootstrap application. I started with tables using Photoshop, ImageReady, and BB Edit. And then for my development tool on the browser, I used Firebug way back and stuck with that for a while until I started using the Chrome developer tools. For different frameworks, I didn't really use a framework. It was just pure HTML. After the tables phase, I went to HTML. But Gumby 960, also known as Blueprint, was my first framework. And then I moved to Bootstrap. So I've been using Bootstrap for a while, about 10 years. And building this new website of mine took me just as long as designing it. And that's because I still used a lot of new applications, implemented accessibility code, and modified several areas of content. And new tools have a learning curve. Now, even jumping from the previous version of Bootstrap that I was using, it was 3.3.7, that uses an outdated legacy framework with jQuery and floats. So Bootstrap 5.3.8 it relies entirely on vanilla JavaScript and CSS Flexbox Grid and some utility classes. So I had become familiar with Flexbox, but still, you can't just migrate from one to the other. I had to completely rebuild the site. And Visual Studio Code became my editor. I had used a bunch of different code editors before that, Sublime and Dreamweaver. As far as accessibility and inclusion go, I've been tweaking the site over the years, but now with a complete refresh, I really needed to tackle it with more mindfully. I wanted to create a more positive user experience. So it's good that Bootstrap addresses some accessibility, but it's not fully compliant. So we still, as developers, have to be sure to use semantic HTML, ARIA roles, test with Lightbox, that's part of Chrome developer tools, take care of some of the issues that might crop up when you do those testings. And just always keep informed, try to keep on top of what's happening in the accessibility world. The next new tool that I used was a JavaScript library called Isotope, and this was for filtering my portfolio galleries. So the galleries themselves were constructed with Bootstrap's grid system, and the filtering was accomplished with Isotope. I used the vanilla JavaScript scripts for it, and I thought it would be beneficial for users to be able to select the different categories of my art or design, depending on the page. So here I've got these different categories. If they just want to view landscapes, animals, pastels, watercolor, they have that ability, or they can just view it all. Implementing Isotope was quite the challenge for me. Fortunately, the script developer provides plenty of documentation and examples on his website, GitHub, and CodePen. Now, prior to this redesign, the galleries had been built with another plugin called Lightbox 2. There are a few additional tools that I'm using. One is MailChimp. I've been using that for many years for my subscription form for my mailing list. I just updated the styling a little bit on the form. But what's new is the contact form. I tried to construct my own form, but it became such a struggle that I decided to go with an online service. So I chose JotForm, and you get your own workspace. It has a bunch of different templates, integrations, all this stuff, which I like. And I was able to style the form in JotForm to match my website as best as I could. There are a variety of ways to publish the form, but rather than embedding the code, I decided to provide a link to the form so that each time I do make an update to the form, I don't have to re-embed the code on my page. The link will take you to the updated form. Another new tool is Cookie Yes for compliance, and that works with cookies as well as privacy. And the final tool, which I just finished figuring out a couple days ago, is the Google Tag Manager. Now, this serves as the central hub for all analytics. And I went to Google Tag Manager because of Cookie Yes. They are integrated, so I had to figure out how do I integrate them. Data is sent from individual tags to the Cookie Tag Manager, and you only have to use the Cookie Tag Manager code on your pages. You don't have to have multiple amounts of code and scripts on your page. So it's a good thing. It's streamlined, but it did take me some effort to wrap my brain around this one. It's a very technical mechanism, and on my blog post, I have a link to some information that might help guide you through it. And my next project will be to update my blog. You'll see there's a disconnect right now between the two, the styling of the two sites. So I've done the design part. I just have to implement the design on my website, my new website, on the blog. And let's go to the home page, and that's what it looks like. So go to my new website. Let me know what you think. askdesign.biz. And then I'm also curious to know, how do you design and build your websites if they're Bootstrap or any kind of HTML-based site. Let us know. Give us some feedback in the comments. And certainly if you have questions, add those to the comments as well. I might dig deeper into some of these tools in later posts, but for now, I just wanted to give you an overview. I hope this was helpful, and thanks for coming. Take care. Bye-bye.